A mother dog beaten and forgotten with her puppies in the rain until a young man appears and changes its destiny. The thunder did not come alone, brought with it the moan, that the world pretended not to hear, the mud running down the broken walls of the house. Abandoned, as if trying to wash what was inside, but there wasn't enough water in the world to put out that. Seen in the darkest corner of the damp room, a German shepherd dog. Skeletal and trembling, she kept her body arched over 3 cubs still. Damp from childbirth, the wounded skin on the exposed ribs denounced that she had not only been beaten by life, she had marks of something much more cruel. She didn't bark, she didn't cry alone. He breathed with effort, as if each breath was a particular battle. Her deep, glazed, yet vigilant eyes ran the room like if the danger was right there, and maybe it was because no one outside. I stopped the cars past the hurried steps on the sidewalk. They avoided the entrance taken by the tall bush to rain, thickened, washing the world that ignored that mute pain. A car. Lady in the red cape came to stop, but it was enough to see the shards of glass in the window to move forward. The mother dog tried to get up. When a crack echoed outside, the legs gave way. One of the cubs slipped under her belly and whimpered hungrily. She pulled him with her paw still, bloody, and wrapped him with her body, even with the skin torn, even with fever, even in the cold. But that was just the beginning. The rain was now beating like fists on the Voiceless roof inside the makeshift shelter. The air smelled musty. Dried blood and milk was dense, of the kind that scratches the kite's throat when breathed. It was at that moment that he appeared, Gabriel Vigna, down the street in soaked sneakers, his backpack glued to his back and his eyes restless, as if looking for something without knowing exactly what. I passed by there every day, but that evening something had made him stop. He didn't see the puppies or the dog. What he saw was the movement. From something behind the crooked grate, small, almost imperceptible, stood still in the rain, running down the forehead the cars, ignoring their presence as they ignored everything there. The heart tightened for a reason that he still could not explain. When he approached the entrance of the house, the haute cars smell hit him hard, raw. It was as if he had entered a world where no one it should be cruel, but he went in anyway. Her eyes met his anyway. At that moment something broke inside him. He had not barked or growled, only the parge look at a request, without sound, without pride, without hope, as if she said, I know that you are also leaving. But Gabriel was not knelt on the floor. Dirty, the water invading the place through the cracks in the floor, saw the fragile puppies. Tiny, alive, saw the cuts on the mother's belly, the paw bent at an angle. Wrong, the ribs marking every inch of skin, tried to get closer. She bared her teeth, not out of anger, out of instinct. Gabriel retreated, spoke softly, not whole words, but sounds, as if the poor bits come to Daka. Intention could be Ora la boyat plank, temicum, understood without vocabulary. And she understood, temicum, or maybe, michur, just didn't have the strength to resist. The boy pulled the cell phone from the kimicum. Pocket without signal, ran up the street, came back. Tried again, dialed 2 places. No one answered. Looked at her still. I looked back at the rain, and the water began to rise on the cracked ground. Puppies moaned. The mother breathed slower. Gabriel knew he needed to do something and quickly went to the entrance, screamed for help. No one answered, looked at. On the side she saw a lady in the house next door, watching through the curtain, shouted to her. Nothing. Ran across the street, rang. Bells, no one opened it, came running back. The chest heaving, the dog's eyes were half closed. Now it was this moment. He reminded her of Mrs. Cecilia, the woman who took care of the cats on the street, above the one that, even with the bomb in white hair and a firm voice, never turned his face to any animal without twicko. Think twice. Gabriel ran, feet sinking in the mud, wind cutting his face. Accelerated breathing, arrived at her house, soaked, and hit the gate of her house. Iron silence slammed again, and then the door slammed open with a creaking. Lady Cecilia was there in slippers and a shabby coat. Her eyes lingered a long time, second to understand, but when she saw the boy's eyes and the despair in them, he didn't ask anything. He just said, show me where she is. And that's when the maber hope began, but they still didn't know how much it was going to hurt. Mrs. Cecilia walked slowly but steadily. The cane sank into the mud. every step as Gabriel went forward, looking back at every moment as if I was afraid that the mother dog would evaporate if they took too long. She will not run away, boy. A wounded mother does not abandon her. Children, said the lady, panting, but without Caldwell. Stopping Gabriel did not answer the heart, hammered inside his chest, and everything in him said they were ACAS. Running against an invisible time, the image of the mother dog, covered in the blood of the puppies, trembling in the dark, stuck in the mind, like a sumpsus. Photograph that no one wanted to take when they arrived at the entrance. Mine of the abandoned house, Mrs. Cecilia stopped, looked at the corner. Crooked gate, the tall weeds, the broken window, took a deep breath. Help me here. Together they pushed the iron railing. The creaking echoed through the empty street like a tala. Warning that something important was about to happen, Gabriel entered first, lighting the way with the cell phone flashlight. The smell. Hit hard again, but Donna. Cecilia didn't back down where she is, Gabriel pointed out. To the corner the lady approached calmly as if recuses. Have dealt with fear many times when your eyes. Found the mother dogs, she bent down slowly. Even though her knees complain, she's still here. She muttered almost to herself. But you're going to need more than courage. The mother dog didn't growl or try to move. The glassy eyes were different. Now there was no confidence, but there was fatigue and a surrender. Silent Mrs. Cecilia stretched out her hand, not to touch, but to show that she was not. He brought nothing but Gabriel's presence. Next to him, he watched in. Silence was like watching something sacred, something that couldn't be interrupted. Nake. Does it have a name? Asked the lady. I don't know, Gabriel replied, but she looked. To me, as if she knew me, lady. Cecilia nodded, looking at the puppies. There are 3 of them, all alive but weak. Gabriel bit his lip. We need to take. They have to do something. Yes, she said, but you understand what goes. Happen if we touch her now. The boy hesitated. She may not resist. You can attack too. You're scared and in pain, so what do we do, lady? He looked around, took an old handkerchief from his bag, tore it into strips, and wet it with a pajoletreuse. Water bottle began to gently clean the dog's face, pushing the dog. Dry blood we start carefully with. Respect. The lady's touch was almost maternal. Gabriel watches every movement. Swallowing hard, I felt like I was learning something, deeper than anything taught in school but the bucking. Attention was still there. At any moment the mother dog could struggle bite. Giving up, one of the puppies began to cry, a thin, desperate sound to the mother. He tried to move, but only moaned. The injured paw trembled. Gabriel approached. That I caught down with his knees sinking into the mud of the ground, caught the puppy, with both hands as if it were made of glass. Handed it to his mother. She welcomed him to her chest with a sigh. Tired at that moment, something lined up. The mother dog no longer deviated the muzzle, longer deviated the piebald. Look, there was something new there. A thread of tenuous but present trust, lady. Cecilia got up with difficulty. We will need to take everyone now before. May the fever beat. Gabriel looked around. We don't have a box or a car. I have one. Home shopping cart and blankets, but need that you stay with her until I come back. The boy froze alone. You said she looked at you differently, that she trusted you. It's now that we find out what. When she left with firm steps, disappearing in the rain, that gave no respite. Gabriel stayed there alone with the dog, and the puppy's time passed slowly, intolerable. Her breathing sometimes seemed to stop. The boy tried to whisper words that he didn't even know where they came from. You'll be fine. Okay, I'm here. A thunderclap made the puppy fight. Ceiling tremble, the puppies cried. Together, the mother sawed her teeth in pain and went. At that moment, that Gabriel saw in the opposite corner of the room, among the entatus, there were more blood, and something was moving there. Gabriel held his breath. The sound came from the back of the house, stuffy wet, like something creeping up. On damp wood, the dog's eyes went in the same direction. She didn't growl, but his tense body, even wounded, seemed to want to rise, as if even dying. Still trying to protect something with the cell phone in hand, Gabriel pointed the light of the flashlight at the rubble passed by a plang. Torn armchair, broken wood, a dirty blanket, and then stood among the shadows a figure. Small, panting, was a 4th cub, was further away from the group, the fur soaked, glued to the thin body, and the muzzle bled. His breathing was so weak that it seemed about to disappear. For a second, Gabriel crawled across the ground, ignoring the cold of the mud every centimeter. It seemed like a test for him, and for the puppy. When he got close, he noticed marks on the floor as if the puppy had been thrown against the wall. Something inside Gabriel snapped. Who would do it lifted the cub with Amantasov. Care so light, so warm and soft, a fope. Yes, a damp cloth. She returned to her mother when she saw the mother. In the boy's arms, the dog whimpered a long, painful sound that it seemed more human than canine. Gabriel laid the puppy next to her, the mother. Licked with difficulty. Even wound you went through hell right, that one. An instant, a new question arose. Who left them there? The house was not just abandoned, was locked inside when the ex-Avila. He arrived, and the signs of violence didn't look old in the corner. Gabriel noticed a piece of dirty rope and a nail on the ground. There was blood there, too. And further on, a plastic bowl turned over. Someone kept you here, the idea. It flashed through her mind like lightning that mother and her cubs had been trapped. Wounded on purpose, she didn't run away. She was left to die. Her stomach turned. The storm outside seemed smaller than the revolt. Growing inside him at that moment, the noise of a wheel approaching brought him back. Was Mrs. Cecilia with the cart of the improvised market came covered with a poncho. Old and determined as an army. We have found one more, shouted Gabriel. In a trembling voice. He was in the back. Someone heard him. The lady stopped the wagon. Narrow eyes staring at the scene. I've seen it before. People who trap mother dog pregnant to sell the puppies when they are no longer good. They discard everything as garbage. Gabriel lowered his head, but she was really injured, even with everything. Truth does not abandon with precise gestures. Mrs. Cecilia began to line the cart. With the blankets, he placed thermos bottles of hot water. Underneath, wrapped in towels. Let's start with the banana. Puppies one by one. Slowly, Gabriel took the first, then the second. The mother followed. With his eyes, every movement tense, but without reacting when it was the injured puppy's turn. She moaned lowly. He needs it. Of more heat, said the lady, and luck with the puppies positioned. There was still the mother. Gabriel hesitated, and she will be the hardest. Mrs. Cecilia opened. A larger blanket approached and spoke softly. Lady, we're going to get you out of here. You just have to trust. Carefully covered her body. Gabriel held the gaze with you. Head of the dog with her hands whispering, stay calm, please. In that touch, she didn't move. With a synchronized gesture, the two put her on. In the cart, the pain made her arch her body, but he did not try to escape. He just closed his eyes as if to say, do whatever it takes. Gabriel covered everyone with a plastic tarp wherever. Now, ask the panting man for my house. There is no clinic open at this time in Dod. We have no money. They started pushing the cart down the deserted street. Sobo's each step seemed like a challenge. The cart was getting stuck in the mud. One of the puppies, cried the mother dog, moaned. But they followed halfway. A car slowed down. Next to them, Gabriel looked hopefully at the glass, lowered, a man of expression. Dura observed them, then accelerated and disappeared. Mrs. Bina? Cecilia only said, most of them. She doesn't want to see, and followed, but the dog started to breathe faster. A sound. Strange, she is shaking. Gabriel took off the tarp and saw her eyes rolling back. Donna. Cecilia, she's erasing. Gabriel's hands trembled when they touched the skin. Soaked from the dog, the blood mixed with the mud slowly flowing. Through the hair, she did not growl. She did not cry. She just remained there, lying in. Around the three tiny bodies that still moved, as if they didn't. Knew better how to protect himself, or if he just had. Giving up trying, the hot, humid breath of the storm made the air thick. Hard to breathe. Gabriel removed his shirt, and Ras used as an improvised blanket to cover the fire. Puppies that moaned softly, sinking their snout into the palm of their hand. The mother, the one Spimak. I watched with low eyes, without the strength to react, but also without more. That was a surrender that hurt more than any. Scream tried to lift her in his lap, but she was not heavy for size, but for the pain she carried. Each movement drew a breath from her, Interrupted, he decided to carry her little by little, wrapped the puppies in his shirt, the puppies, put it in an abandoned box nearby, and went back to get it. Didn't know exactly what I was doing, I just knew that he could not leave them at every step down the muddy street. The emotional weight of the care added to the physical bagasaf. The eyes of the surrounding houses were dull, and even those who peeked through the cracks of the windows looked away when they saw him pass by with their help. No one opened the door, no one offered help. The city seemed deaf to the dull call he had heard. Gabriel remembered Donna Cecilia. She had already helped him before with food. When his mother got sick, he ran his arms, hurting his chest. Panting, the rain started again, thin and cold, now as if the sky was tired of. Scream when he reached the gate of the lady's house. He could barely speak. Pointed to the animals. Mrs. Cecilia opened without asking. Her face did not express surprise, just a silent firmness, as if already expected that something like that would reach her inside the house. The smell of herbs, wood, and time wrapped the wet bodies. She indicated a towel. After an old cushion in the corner of the living room, the sofa was moved away with a gesture. Gabriel quickly laid the puppies there with all the care he could. Gathered the dog, but did not want to lie down. Tried in vain to stand up. He wanted to be between them, but his legs trembled. Gabriel knelt next to him and assured, as if lending her own stability to her by the fuck. First time her eyes turned to him with fiveness, something different, and almost shine a vestige of trust. Mrs. B won a vestige of trust. Mrs. B Lee. Cecilia already. The time was on the phone asking for help from a veterinarian friend. Words were short, dry, almost military, but they're Friedeck. Gestures with animals were those who have seen many battles and never turned his face. The yellow light of the room gave a tone, warm to the almost unreal scenario. Time seemed suspended inside Gabriel. Her legs were numb, but she didn't want to move. She was afraid that if you stopped touching that mother dog for a Kerim. As she disappeared, the lady brought a bowl of warm water and began to examine Gabriel. Cleaned the mother's paws, even with the fresh blood still flowing. When Hublaf passed a cloth under her chest, the dog let out a weak moan and her eyes were seasoned. Closed, not in pain but in surrender. It was as if to say, all right, I'll take it. But then one of the puppies stopped moving. Gabriel noticed before anyone else the Kanewasam. The small body that had previously shivered under his shirt was now motionless. Took him in the palm. Tessei Zatches took him in the palms. 80 hands, the heart racing, tried to warm him with breathing with the palms. With desperation, she swayed her body gently as if she could wake it up. Donna Cecilia. He approached and gently touched Gabriel's shoulder and said nothing. Silence between the two hurt more than any words at that moment. The dog crawled. How far was he ignoring the pain, the blood, the wobbly legs? He lay next to the cub, leaning his nose against him, closed his eyes with a sigh. Long escaped from his chest, as if apologizing for not being able to protect him. Was when Gabriel understood. She was still fighting, but she was already saying goodbye inside, and he could allow that to be the end. Tell me in the comments where you are watching and enjoy to leave your like. The phone fell from the owner's hand. Cecilia. At the moment, the veterinarian's voice announced the worst. He couldn't get there in less than an hour or two. Flood had blocked the road. There was no way to pass. Gabriel heard the news in silence, but the sound that came from inside him was like the crack, dry from a branch breaking for an hour. That mother dog didn't have an hour left. Maybe not even the puppies had felt the crack. Ground give way on the feet, not of clay, but of impotence. The eyes of the mother dog. They found his again, as if they felt the same urgency as she still did. Was there, but for a while the breath was interrupted, almost a whisper, and the Kakabelen puppy that did not move remained motionless. Mrs. Cecilia got up slowly. He went to the closet, rummaged through old boxes, and came back with a medicine, a white cloth, a vial, and a glass syringe. Spoke with calm but firm. She needs warmth, and the milk puppies you hold me. Guido was an order disguised as a suggestion. Gabriel obeyed without hesitation, as he wrapped the dog in heated blankets. In the oven, Mrs. Cecilia prepared a formula. Improvised milk, sugar, and a drop of olive oil was not ideal, but it was what Hoik had, and now any gesture was a chance. One by one, the puppies were fed with the syringe. The two who were still moving reacted weakly. But they reacted. The third, nothing. Gabriel insisted. massaging gently, her little body cold, while Donna Cecilia murmured low prayers as if so protection with words, and then by a miracle that none of them could explain, the puppy shuddered a bobbin, only spasm, almost invisible, but real. Gabriel screamed not of fear, but of hope. The little chest went up and down again, sobbing as if the world was being learned again from the inside out. But that was just the chest, and at first the mother dog moaned a sharp sound in the desperate background, and soon after her eyes were Osa. They turned for a moment. Gabriel held her tight, calling for her, even though he had no knowing her name. She opened her eyes again, but now she trembled all over. Shock. Mrs. Cecilia hurried her steps, took a towel wet with warm water, and began to rub her body with firm movements, trying to bring her back. Gabriel watches her helplessly, with his heart choking in his chest. "Don't let me." "She go," he whispered almost to himself. The lady did not answer, only increased the strength of the hands, and then the impossible happened again. The mother dog twisted weakly, but the sound was there. A new breath opened. She blinked, moved her paw. Heck, Frilia, she passed the snout to the puppy just awake. There were no words, just a cot to stay. Mute understanding among everyone in that room. The thread of life still resisted, but the sheepos battle was far from over. The rain on the side. From the outside, the noise of the shaking tiles thickened again, seemed to announce that the world outside was still relentless. All the time, always he ran against Mrs. Cecilia, sat down for a moment, her hands trembling and breathing. Tired, Gabriel realized she wasn't young. Her strength, it came from another place, not from the body but from the soul, and she had already given a lot in that night. He got up. "I'm going to get help, the car. Someone who will take her to the Frass clinic." The lady looked at him with surprise. "But in this storm no one will come out. Someone will go, even if it's just me." Gabriel took the coat, the wet backpack, and left. With his face against the wind, the gate slammed behind him. The night swallowed him up, but inside the house the dog kept her eyes open, as if waiting for her owner. Cecilia stroked her head and whispered, "He's coming back. I know, and will." But at that moment the sound of a loud thunder went out, and with it the lights. The silence was as thick as smoke. "Mrs. Cecilia groped for the furbesac. Dark house, trying to find candles, matches, anything that would light up. That black hole that the world seemed to have become the storm. Outside roared, but inside those walls, everything. Koa's static suspended. The dog continued to lie, wrapped in the body. Blankets, the cubs nestled in her womb, as if the body. It was still the only safe place in the world, but the Kai braid heat began to fade. The lit candles soon went out, as if time itself grew was blowing against them. The mother dog was breathing slower now, her body. Before tense, he gave way to exhaustion. Mrs. Cecilia knelt next to her. Holding his paw, he didn't say anything. He just stood there, as if his touch could, to prevent death from approaching. She felt small, a grain of sand trying to. Barring the sea, the minutes passed, and Gabriel did not come back outside. Lightning flashed, maps cracked in the sky. Each lightning bolt seemed to open cracks in the prin. At the time, the woman closed her eyes, searching inside. For some ancient strength, she thought of the son she hadn't seen for years, and her husband buried for more than a decade in the Sekner rubber. Loneliness that had accompanied her like a shadow for so long, and shadow for so long, and Chusmau. That boy who entered your house like lightning with burning eyes and voice, trembling, could have gotten lost there too. Outside, she squeezed the dog's paw harder. "Don't leave me alone." "Moo," he whispered, but the answer came in the form of a low, almost inaudible moan. The dog panted, and the eyes, once alive with instinct, now seemed to sink into a veil of tiredness. One of the cubs moved away, as if felt that the nest was no longer warming up as it used to. Mrs. Cecilia shivered. She wrapped him in a dry cloth, brought it close to the skin, but the cold seemed to come from within. It was no longer just the weather outside that threatened. It was as if the whole fate was decided, but at that moment something happened. A sound on the side of out steps run, and the front door opened forcefully. Gabriel entered, wet to the bone, eyes wide. Behind him, a lighted beacon of key plan. Car and a middle-aged man soaking wet with a fairthew. Raincoat and a black bag, is the vet screamed. Gabriel panting. He managed to get to the back road. Mrs. Cecilia did not, replied. He just looked up at the sky for a second, and then looked at the sky for a second. First time that night, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Veterinarian knelt next to the mother dog, fast, accurate, examined the bladder. Mucous membranes felt the abdomen, checked. The heartbeat, removed a bag from the bag. Thermal, a syringe, and 2 vials. She is in hypovolemic shock, lost a lot. Accurate blood fluids immediately applied to the needle with dexterity, while the mother dog barely reacted. Gabriel watched with his heart in his hands as the man administered the injections as Gimanisov, who sews life with needle and thread, but even with medicines, the body of the Yakuts. Mother dog didn't improve. The pulse was weak. The eyes almost closed her. In transfusion now. Gabriel looked around. I have the same type as Boz. Where she needs. The vet hesitated. No, but maybe the dog from my clinic me. I brought blood. Luckily I kept it in the car, but I didn't know if I would have time. It ran until the vehicle and returned with a makeshift blood bag connected to tubes to 2. Infusion started. The red liquid ran through the tubes, as a last attempt to rekindle the flame almost. Extinguished, and then a new silence, but this time there was something different about it, the Perquajarman. The mother dog's breathing began to change slowly, more deep. A muscle moved. One eye opened. She moved her head. Then he raised his snout and touched his face with a moist tip. Gabriel, who was kneeling in front of him. The boy collapsed, not in words. In tears. She was there. She was still there, but it was only when the vet was. He became tired, dirty with mud up to his knees, which revealed what everyone feared. Listen, she will live, but by little, and only if she rests. She reached the limit. All. They breathed. And at that exact moment, the generator of the house turned on. A dim light illuminated the room. It was faint, but it was enough to show what was. Survived. The heat gradually returned, as if the house breathed again in the faith. Dim light illuminated by the generator. Gabriel's face looked older, not by the season now, but for the crossing. He remained by the side of the dog, now accommodated on dry blankets with a clean sheet under the body. The puppies suckle with more strength. The new blood ran in her, and some spark. It had rekindled. It was still weak, but something in his eyes had changed when Gabriel reached out for the first time. She didn't retreat. She just stood there watching the wet snout approach, hesitating until he lightly touched the boy's fingers. Was like a spark. Mrs. Cecilia silently observes everything from the chair near the wall. She knew. I recognized that kind of look. It was the look of someone who lived hell, but still. I wanted to believe that the world could be a little less cruel, Gabriel whispered. Something, a low sound, just for her. You're strong, you know. The mother dog blinked slowly, then looked at the puppies, and, as if by instinct, the puppies pulled a little closer to the body. Outside, the storm was beginning to subside. Drops fell more spaced out, as if the sky was also exhausted. A smell of tuiles. Wet earth entered through the crack of the window, the sound of the window. Crickets came back timidly. The vet stood up, cleaning her hands. She needs absolute rest. No stress. No stress, no noise, and you two need to rest too. Gabriel shook his head without. Take my eyes off the mother dog. I stay with her just a little longer. The man nodded later. Before leaving, he looked at Mrs. Cecilia. This boy has something different. It is as if he felt more than the others. She smiled, but did not answer in the room the time. Manna seemed to have stopped. Gabriel lay down on the floor next to the dog. He was exhausted, but she didn't want to sleep. She wanted to be there if she needed it, even if it was just to keep his eyes open. Little by little, silence enveloped him. It was then that it happened. She moved her neck slowly and rested her muzzle on his shoulder. The touch. It was light, almost imperceptible, but there, in that gesture, there was everything. Confidence, gratitude, surrender. Gabriel did not move. A tear flowed hot down the corner of the eye. She had accepted it, and that changed everything. The next morning, the sun, he went through the cracks of the window like a silent blessing to the house. It smelled of bread and fresh coffee. Mrs. Cecilia was all ready. standing up, stirring the pots as if everything was exactly where it should be. Dog still couldn't walk, but when she heard Gabriel's footsteps, she tried to lift her. His head, his eyes followed him attentively. There was something new there, expectation. She approached slowly. "Good morning, warrior," and for the first time she wagged her tail. "Weak but real, Mrs." Cecilia almost dropped the cup. "You saw that, Gabriel?" Smiled, her eyes shining. She remembers, she knows she's safe now, she trusted. "In you," said the lady under breath. "It's rare they feel when the heart is clean." Gabriel knelt down and offered a piece of shredded chicken. The dog sniffed, hesitated, then accepted. The movement of the tail, repeated this time firmer and dire. Then the name came out of Donna Cecilia's mouth as if the time was already there. Every hope Gabriel looked at her as perfect. She survived when no one. He looked when the world turned its face and still protected what he loved. Dog, now baptized, closed her eyes and leaned her head on the boy's leg. The beginning of something new, but they still didn't know how much that name Hope became. It would be true that time does not run the same inside a home, that is. Reborn, there are days when it flies without leaving a trace. Without leaving a trace, others it flows. Slow as thick honey in an old pot for hope. Every morning was anew. Crossing the wounds healed little by little, but still burned on cold nights. Mrs. Cecilia bought a navy blue blanket and put Shirlow under the makeshift bed, saying that color. I drove away bad dreams, hope I slept better there, and the puppies grew up with Bazoo. Eyes more and more attentive to the world, Gabriel arrived early every day, never in a hurry. He always brought something, fruit, bread, or just words. He talked to her like if she was talking to someone who understood everything, and maybe she really feasted. "Have you looked out the window today?" he said, opening the curtain for the to dry. The sun came in. Is beautiful outside. Hope didn't wag his tail like the other dogs. She blinked slowly, raised her head slightly. It was the Predrai. Each puppy was given a name. Gabriel chose, without much effort, the Thado. Bigger, all black, turned to Thunder. The most restless, that nibbled everything, turned Spark. And the little one, who hid behind her mother, turned into a cloud of hope. She accepted his presence. Naturally, there was no longer tension in her breath. When Gabriel wiped her eyes with cotton wool, turned remained motionless when holding its young in the beckyger. She just watched attentively, but without fear, however. Not everyone saw that. With the same eyes, it is not safe to keep them here for a long time, he warned. The veterinarian visiting the house is old, and she needs more space. Gabriel looked for Mrs. Cecilia. She felt it, but with regret. "We will find the right place," he said. "And until then, we take care of it one day at a time." But that was just the beginning. Because on a muggy afternoon, when the smell of rain still waved a yard, a city hall car appeared, a neighbor bothered by the prochet. A smell of rain and barking had made an enunciation of the Carrick. Gabriel's heart pounded when he saw the men at the gate. They'd be Carrick. They spoke of retreat, public shelter, procedure. Hope Pattern, noticing the tense tone of the voices, stood up with effort. Standing in front of the puppies, the hair bristling, the eyes fixed. Gabriel put between her and the agents. "She is recovering and is not abandoned. It's under care. I'm responsible for it." The men hesitated, one of them. Gabriel also showed videos, photos, the veterinarian's reports. Showed scar to wound newborn puppies. It was Donna Cecilia who diffused the moment. "I'm in charge of this house, and it's here under Bafam. My permission." The tension gave way slowly as tension. The door unlocking at the end of God. 20 minutes of God. 20 minutes of God. Conversation. The men went away, but Gabriel felt something break inside him. It wasn't enough to do good, it was necessary. Defend him all the time. That night, he couldn't sleep the next day. Arrived with a folded paper in my pocket and steady eyes. I found a place, a shelter. Real small, without cages, with good people. Only one thing missing, Mrs. Cecilia understood before he said money. He nodded. She looked at the table to seepage, the cookie jar to the stained ceiling from seepage, and then opened the drawer. "Take it, ain't much, but it's what I save for when someone else." Gabriel really needed it. He squinted his eyes too. "Hold on to the emotion. Thank you. I swear I'll return it." "I don't want it back," she said. "I want you to take Hope with you in that." Later, he began to prepare for the transition. The shelter was on the outskirts of the city. A simple place, but with a shady lawn, good food, and people who really enjoyed the Ferris. Still, it would be hard for Hope to get out of there. When he came back to get everyone. He knelt next to her. "Let's move. It's a place more. Spacious, with good smells and real sun." Hope leaned his nose against the cacheta. His leg wasn't a his, but it wasn't a hard defy either. It wasn't what he needed, but departure. Moment of departure would bring more than he expected. Because the mabine. When putting it in the car, something unforeseen happened. The engine of the car rumbled low as the dirt road shook them lightly, and the back seat Hope was huddled next to the puppies. Wrapped in a thick blanket, Gabriel drove slowly, one hand firmly on the steering wheel, again and again reaching out to touch the blanket as if to say without words, "I'm here." The sky was clear, but there was still moisture in the air, the smell of hymen. Wet earth entered through the cracks of the glass, mixed with the sweet and almost. From the soap used to wash the blankets that morning, everything seemed in peace, but too much peace sometimes announces storm. 2 blocks away. To get to the shelter, when the car choked, Gabriel frowned, spun his key again. The engine squeaked, twisted, and died. It came out, lifted the hood, steam won. Acid smell, the radiator had burst. Looked around the little neighborhood. Busy high walls, closed windows, none. Familiar face in the back seat, Hope. Raised her head. There was something strange in her eyes, a flash of warning. As if she had sensed something, even before Gabriel took the cell phone. Without signal, walked a few meters. Nothing was when he heard the sound. Not a bark or emitter. A meow was a cry. A human cry. Around the corner saw a small boy, sitting on the sidewalk with dirty hands and a cut on his forehead. Behind him a woman. Fallen pale, unconscious reality collided with him. Like a punch in the stomach, he looked back. The puppies slept. Hope the potty. I watched restlessly and ran back, opened the back door. I need help, someone. Fell there. I can't leave them alone. Hope, but I can't ignore either. She continued to look at it. It was then that something impossible happened. With effort visible, she stood up. Staggered a little. Gabriel tried to hold her, but she growled low. Not of anger, but of decision. She got out of the car. The puppies in the fess up. Instinct followed her with their eyes. Hope turned around, walked to the sidewalk where the boy was still crying, and then she simply sat next to him. The boy looked at her, surprise caressed. Her neck with trembling fingers, she stood there, living statue. Patience, like a fruity of your protection. Gabriel ran to the woman and checked her breathing was weak but present. He got back in the car, took the blanket, wrapped the woman, and called help with the signal that has finally returned to the cell phone. When the paramedics arrived, they found a scene that a whole German shepherd would be forever marked. Scarred, seated as a sentry next to a child between she and her mother's body. She protected us, murmured the boy in a voice. Choked, Gabriel looked at the scene with moist eyes. It wasn't just a gesture. Instinctive, was as if for an instant hope had returned to its essence. The one who was once crushed, betrayed, wounded, and had recovered it not by herself, but for someone who needed it when they arrived at the shelter. Hours later, everyone were exhausted. The puppies were placed in a stall, ample with clean blankets, toys, and food. Hope took a long time to get out of the car. Gabriel held out his hand and supported the corded muzzle there for a second, and then came down, looking at everything calmly. There was no cages nor high fences. There was grass and trees and good silence. One of the volunteers pointed to the ground. She left something there. Gabriel looked. It was a wire. From mixed fur to mud, more visible, a mark left as if to say, I passed here that night. Before leaving, Gabriel knelt on the floor of the floor. Vaya, you are not only strong, you are much more than that. You are much is missing in the world. Hope laid her head on her own cubs with a floor sigh, but before closing his eyes, he looked up. One last time, he found his cheek that, and in that brief moment, without noise, without cries, exactly something was sealed between the two. A pact that needed no words but plans. He didn't know yet that fate was preparing another one. Miss Surprise let him go timidly in the contra one, horizon illuminating the small clearing where Esperanza and her puppies rested. The air brought a light perfume of wet earth and flowers that were beginning to bloom as if the world were also. If he wanted to celebrate that silent morning, Gabriel was sitting there in the Kunkenham bench, wooden bench that Donna Cecilia had improvised, watching the dog who Ken. Despite the deep scars, he now exhibited a rare serenity. The cubs played nearby, awkwardly and waltzagry. Curious people exploring every corner of the improvised shelter, it was impossible not to notice the Kane transformation, not only physical but of the soul, that looked previously marked by fear and trust. And distrust now carried a faint but firm glow of someone who had returned to Kane trust in life. Mrs. Cecilia approached with a cup of hot tea to Begeth, wrinkled hand caressing the soft fur of Hope. The dog accepted the gesture with a slight shake of the head, a silent thank you that It warmed up more than any word Gabriel. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what they had experienced, all the pain, the storm, the endless night on the threshold of loss. Everything seemed to have dissolved in that moment of calm. He remembered the first day of the rain, heavy and feel locked door, of helplessness to see that mother fight for her puppies now there every day. Her breath and that of her cubs was a testament to his strength and resilience. Called the name he had chosen with affection, a promise engraved in his heart. They had shown sacred hope, and it was then that something broke inside him. There is no pain but the weight of the prayer, the something doubt, giving way to a deep certainty that would save that trio of eyes. Bright, and that wounded mother, was more than an act of compassion. It was a call to never stop seeing the invisible, to hear the silence that cries out for help as the sun rose, illuminating the dreary yellow. Happier, tired faces of all there, Gabriel realized that the bond that had been born in that abandoned house under the storm now. It became a bridge between past and future, between abandonment and home, between despair and love. Hope was not just a mother dog, it was the life that insists that it survive, that insists that it survives, that turns darkness into light. And in that instant, their story became more than a narrative of Kai's. Rescue became a legacy for all who one day refused to give up last. The image that was recorded that morning was that of hope looking shore and a visa stay to the horizon, their young nestled at the Kiva Frio, protected and love side, finally in peace. Thank you for coming this far. But no, exit still on the screen next to it is another exciting story. Click subscribe on the channel and share. I'll wait for you there.